This is Morgan Freeman. If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
This is The Edge.
Edge-show.com.
Edge lubricates as it lathers.
Edge-show.com.
Listen to the phone side, then listen to the edge side.
Edge-show.com.
Phone, edge.
Edge-show.com.
This is The Edge.
Hey, welcome to the show. This is Mark Thompson. Thank you very much for being here. I want to take a second and thank you for recommending our show to others who might have interest in it. It really does help grow the show. You know, it's just a grassroots thing. So you hear a show that you like and you send on a link to someone, that really does help us. We're at edge-show.com, and you can also listen on iTunes and Stitcher and subscribe that way. Thank you for your subscriptions. Thank you for shopping on Amazon through our site. I know every podcast does it, but if you click on the link on our site at edge-show.com, we get a little piece of whatever your Amazon session adds up to. And it's the same Amazon for you, only Amazon spins off a little because we're the site you click through. Some of you have done that, and that really matters. And some of you have left us donations on PayPal. We appreciate that, too. I really want you to know that I sincerely thank you, and it really does help defray some of the costs of operating our show. Today, J. Elvis Weinstein returns from a hiatus. He was foreman of a jury that had to rule in a murder trial. And then in the second half of the show, our guest was convicted of murder. Only one catch: he didn't do it. He went to prison for over 20 years, not having committed the crime. And then finally, he was exonerated. What is he doing with the rest of his life? What was it like in prison? We talked to him about all those things. Again, thanks for being here. And on with the show. All right, welcome back to the show. You were away for a few weeks.
I was.
Jay Elvis was on a jury during the time that he's been away from our show, and his jury was actually called to participate in a murder trial.
It was murder. Yes, it was. And this is my fourth time as a juror, by the way. So this, getting the murder felt like being called up to the show almost at this point.
Yeah, right. Like you've done the minor leagues, which has been...
but it was kind of a minor league murder, I got to say.
Oh, before you get to the minor league murder, tell me about the other stuff that you, like in the minor leagues leading up to this, before you got the murder trial. What kind of stuff were you sitting in on?
I sat in on one. My favorite was... I think
jurors reflect on their favorite trials.
My favorite was guy walks into a bar. I know that'll tell you why it's my favorite right there. Super drunk guy walks into a bar and starts causing trouble, and his wife comes in. He's already drunk, and his wife comes in behind him and is like trying to get him to stop drinking. And the reason he's in the bar is because the liquor store had cut him off for the night. Wow. So he's drunk, no question about that. And so the bouncer kicks him out of this bar, and as he's getting kicked out, he's like, "I'm gonna freaking kill you!" And this is all happening in Spanish, by the way. So it's you think telenovela style when it's in court, because everything has to be translated in court. Everything is English, Spanish, 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 English, English. So yeah. So they kick him out of the bar. 5 minutes later, he comes back into the bar with a machete. Starts waving it, going, "I'm gonna freaking kill you," And they got the machete away, but the crime was still, committed. Once you've waved the machete, you've committed the crime still in L.A. And so the only defense that his lawyer, public defender, I'm certain, could come up with was my client was so drunk that you couldn't possibly take his threat seriously. Oh. So, yeah, But as a juror, I'm going, no, drunk guy with a machete is like 15 times scarier than sober guy with a machete. Right. Sober guy with a machete could just be on his way home from his banana cutting job, needs a drink,
So the jury did not deliberate long on that one?
No, and I was the foreman of that one as well. I've been a foreman 3 out of the 4 times.
And so you ruled guilty.
We did rule guilty, and in fact, as foreman, I had to. It was such an immediate vote of guilty that I had to stall a little bit, So it wasn't just the jury deliberated for over 3 minutes, Anyone want to say anything about it before we?
Anybody want to share any plans for the holidays before we go back in? Don't want to come in with this verdict too quickly.
And at first, I was actually very flattered that they, named me the foreman, and then I realized no, they're choosing me to go tell the guy who threatens people with machetes that he's going to jail. So thanks for that.
The sentencing, you guys aren't around for that, or are you?
No part of that, thankfully.
Okay. So what happens to these people after you found them guilty is not part of your world as a juror.
No, and none of these have made news radar, I would say, for me to easily follow up. It would take some phone calls, I think, to find out what actually happened.
You mentioned the Spanish thing. Are there a lot of people who are immigrants who don't speak the language who end up in the court system?
As jurors or as defendants?
As defendants.
I think so. I've had a rainbow coalition of defendants in my jury.
Tell us about somebody else in the coalition.
The one civil trial I was on was kind of hilarious because it was this Iranian guy without insurance. It was a traffic thing against this Valley girl with an insurance company behind her, but he decided to represent himself. So it was like this 2-day Peter Sellers movie. It was one of the funniest, like most incompetent, hilarious things I've seen in my time as a juror.
You have to sit there,
and it was only Burbank too, so it wasn't even that hard to commute to. It was like almost a pleasure. It was almost a pleasure to watch this thing happen because he was just like, he was so bad, and you just like go off on these like, I know what you're thinking. Oh, just this Iranian guy. It's like, no, we weren't thinking that. Whose lawyer threw his case away. No, we weren't thinking that. And then he'd get her, he'd get the girl on the stand and he'd ask her questions. So where were you headed before you took this illegal left turn? And she's like, I was going to, my phone was broken, so I was going to the phone store. He's like, so were you maybe texting or looking at your phone? She's like, no, my phone was dead. I was going to the phone. So were you maybe reading a magazine? It was really fun.
So how long did you deliberate on that one?
That was another
quickie.
Yeah, and especially with a civil trial because you only need 9.
And I assume you just go quick show of hands. Anybody?
Yeah, it was you get a preliminary vote basically to see where everyone's at,
and then everybody,
and then it was like, oh, everyone says guilty except for this one dude who was like, I was like, well, do you want to talk about it? He's like, nope. Like, well, we got 11 to 12. That's all we need.
That's cool.
So.
Yeah. Anybody have any plans for the holidays before we go back in?
That one I didn't feel so bad doing quickly because it was a traffic crash.
Before you get to the murder trial, I have one follow-up question.
Okay.
You mentioned
yes,
you mentioned the Spanish thing, and you said on the jury or and so it made me think, why are there people who literally don't speak the language too well on the jury?
There are people who try to convince the judge they don't speak the language more than there are. So yes, there are and there are situations where translators are available and stuff too. But you aren't going to get a non-English speaking juror, but they will definitely let people who don't speak English super well on the jury.
Wow.
And there are people who I've talked to who had way more of an accent when they were in the courtroom than when they were in the hallway,
Right.
Just trying to get out. Everyone has their play, And by the way, I'm a comic, doesn't get you off a jury.
Well, talking about getting off the jury, are you party to some stories about getting off the jury?
No, it's just people are just try. People will take everyone has their different sense of entitlement on jury duty. So
well, what do they say though? It's kind of like in traffic. No, I'm in a hurry because I have something very important to head to.
It's that exact
I can't do
thing.
jury duty because I'm a blank.
Right.
Right.
Some of them will play it's just too big a hardship. Some of them will really play I no speak English very good. Yeah. Generally, if it's like a legit concern, they'll kind of let you go. If you've come down to the actual courthouse and doing your duty by actually coming down there, like I got off of one trial because I had to leave town after like 3 weeks, and it was like the trial was going to take more than 3 weeks.
What trial was that?
I don't.
Oh, you never served at all on it?
No, but I got to the interview. I never got to actual voir dire, but they were asking qualifying jurors for voir dire.
Voir dire is a French term?
Yes.
And it means?
Ask questions.
I thought for sure you'd know. That's the whole reason I asked. You're the smartest guy
I think
on
it's
this
see
podcast.
and say is what I would think it. Voir and
voir is
dire.
To see and dire is to speak.
Yeah.
To say, yeah.
But what it means in the court system is when you interview jurors.
It's a legal phrase that refers to blah, 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 as you said. From the French, to see, to speak. So Josh, you were right on.
Thank you, Brian.
And now it's, of course, just to assemble an impartial group of people to preside over a trial as jurors. Now, let's get to the trial that you were involved in.
Okay.
You were involved in a murder trial.
I was involved in a murder trial.
Now, without knowing anything, Man kills woman?
No.
Oh. And it was murder, not manslaughter.
It was murder, not manslaughter, but that was part of what we had to determine.
Oh, this is good.
That was really the central question was really what flavor of murder, I would say.
All right, go ahead. Tell us about it.
So it was homeless guys, and it was in the parking lot of a Burger King. And I know it was a murder because the murder took place on videotape. In the Burger King parking lot. So when you have the tape of the murder, you as a defense attorney kind of want the jury to see that over and over and over again. So it was like, binge watching A Clockwork Orange without cinematography.
How long was the video?
The video was a good 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, I would say. And
how many times do you think you might have seen it?
I probably saw it 15 times in various lengths. Only probably 3 or 4 times that its full play out.
So 2 homeless guys in the Burger King.
There was 3 homeless guys total involved.
Okay.
2 of them beating on a now dead guy.
It was a money thing, a robbery?
No. I mean, maybe it was a robbery thing, but there was no witness to say how the argument started. But it was an argument among this guy and these 2 other homeless guys outside of Burger King. And he rode up on his bicycle, he being the victim. And they started talking. You could see them talking. And then they go off camera for a good bit of time. And then by the time they come back in camera, he's kind of backing up the victim guy. And they're clearly about to fight. He backs up, falls down on his back. The 2 guys converge on him and start beating the living shit out of him. Literally, the living shit out of him. And so at that point, it's like, no, that's a fight, But then the guy was clearly down and out, and there was a pause, and then they came back and started kicking his head into the curb and kicking, and that's when it became a murder.
Right.
There was clearly a decision made to now punish this guy, as opposed to self-defend.
So why was it just one guy on trial? Sounds like
we
2
never
guys.
found out. Guy number 2, who was the less active of the fatal blow kicking, we never had, we don't know what happened to him. I assume he pled out.
I see.
Okay.
So
So this guy here's the extenuating circumstance is that the guy who's dead was on meth and crack or meth and cocaine.
why would that matter?
Well, because the coroner said the cause of death was overdose of meth and cocaine with additional circumstances being blunt force trauma to the head, but he said non-fatal blunt force trauma and an enlarged heart. So now the issue becomes...
What kind of shit coroner is
The
that?
shit coroner...
Here's a guy who gets the crap kicked out of him, then his head is smacked against the curb over and over and over
But the
again.
coroner's contending that that if this guy was healthy, these would not be fatal blows.
Yeah, right.
So Dr. Pukins was his name, which is, a good name for a stuffed animal, but which is, by the way, the one I actually got the jury to crack up because the defense lawyer comes out into the hallway while we're waiting out there and calls down the hall, Dr. Pukins, and then goes back in, and I just kind of went, that kind of sounds more like something you name a stuffed animal. And they all kind of cracked up. And it's like a good jury joke. I know it's not like a great joke.
No, it's fine.
But when we get back into the jury box...
Because there's no off switch on you, is there?
There's no off switch. It's always going. There's no appropriate, inappropriate.
But you get back in the jury box.
I'll get back in the jury box, and they actually call the coroner to the stand. Dr. Pukins, like 4 people in the jury next to me, crack up when they hear his name. And I can kind of look at them like, what is wrong with you?
I did that.
Yes. So it was a good class clown.
Describe Dr. Pukins to me because he strikes me as weak.
I would put Dr. Pukins, he was very stern, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put him Eastern European.
Mm-hmm.
I can't nail it down beyond that.
Okay, but how old is he?
I'd say late 50s.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And he's an L.A. coroner?
Yeah. I hate to out this guy on the radio like this.
No, that's all right. Not a big deal.
Heavy
set man?
Not a heavy set man in my recollection. But I'm not that good a witness, I have to say. Not that many good witnesses involved with this whole thing, I have to say.
Were there witnesses, though?
There were a couple of witnesses.
And what did the witnesses say?
The witnesses basically recounted these guys beating the crap out of this other guy. One of them was a terrible, hilariously terrible witness. He was like telling this very embellished story and how he had seen the victim eating in the Burger King, just enjoying his burger and minding his own business. which may or may not have been true. We don't even necessarily think the guy
You're
was
cranked
there.
up on meth. I don't think you're having a lot of burgers.
This is not a good part of LA where this Burger King was. So I think quality witnesses were hard to get for the 9 o'clock Burger King crowd. But he's like literally, he's telling the story and, trying to involve himself in the story way more than he was. It's very clear because, it was on tape, first of all. It's just a bad witness.
This reminds me of the extra story, right? The guy calling his folks. He's an extra in Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is about, from your perspective, it's different,
Right.
Let me tell
always
you.
the hero in your own story.
Right. So he's calling back home, the extra in Hollywood, and his mom says, well, congratulations, son, that you're in this movie. And what's it about? He says, well, this guy is on the corner and he's waiting for the light to change, and then it changes and he walks across the street, and then a bunch of other stuff happens.
Exactly. That was sort of
So this guy sees himself as the center of the action.
Right. And you know how anyone who's ever watched a court show where the lawyer will go, now can you tell me who that person is, that person in the courtroom today? And then they point at the defendant. Sure. Just to get it on the record who the person's talking about. So he tells the story and the lawyer goes, so can you point out in the courtroom who was at the Burger King that night? And he's like, fuck, he's stumped by this. And he's looking around. He's looking around the whole courtroom really slowly, looking at everyone's face. And the lawyer literally goes, this is not a trick question. And he's still, can you just tell me who in this room was at the Burger King that night? And he's looking around. And then he looks to the guy next to me in the jury box and goes, that guy in the gray. Yeah? And she goes, no more questions, Your Honor. And that was it. It was so great.
Oh, that's just too good.
The other thing is like when the witnesses because they made the witnesses watch the tape too, and and they're going, and the judge is going, no, please, no comments. Like one actually broke down in tears while she was watching it.
It's tough to watch somebody get
It is,
murdered.
but as a juror, you're like, like stoicism is like your one gig. That's like the one thing you have to do. You can't really react because it's all,
What? Yet when you see people report on high-profile murder cases, typically, they're always talking about the jury reaction.
Right.
People winced as the video was shown in court that,
Yeah, and I'm sure, I had my back to most of the jury, so it was like I didn't actually see, but your gig is to just to be quiet at least.
Where you sit in a jury is determined by numerical random.
It's just how you're picked.
Right.
I was in the front row, and it was like this tiny little chair, so it felt like a bad parent-teacher conference,
How
like
long was
the worst parent-teacher conference. Your kid just murdered someone in the parking lot.
Good news is they can't ID him, aside from the video. Your daily ritual of attending the trial, how long was it? How many hours?
Once the trial starts, usually they'd start at like 10 or 10:30, depending on if there's business that the court had to do. And then there's like mandatory 90-minute lunch at noon, like union lunch, which is really a drag. You just have to like hang, because you're downtown. And
90 minutes is a long time,
yeah. And then like you come back at 1:30, and then there's like a break at 3, and then you're done at 4:15.
Any other comics and writers on your jury?
No.
Any other people who you wanted to be in touch with on your jury?
There's always nice people, It's always like that's kind of part of why I like jury duty is it's just like this is a chance to mix with people in a context that you would never be thrown together in before, and it kind of brings out the best in people once they're picked. Once they're actually a juror, they kind of like put away their resentment generally.
Yeah. I don't hear about celebrities on juries too much. How do they get out of it?
Well, because I don't think you want the celebrity on your jury if you're a lawyer, because that becomes what?
The distraction.
Yeah.
So after this trial, day after day, how many days did it go on?
I think it was like 10 total days.
Wow.
Some of them were part days, and there was a couple of days off, and
was there a sense of justice swinging back and forth and lack of certainty about what you might actually rule as a jury?
I think it was the only uncertainty was like, I was the foreman of it, and so it was like, and that you have to sort of strategize because there's no guidance. There's there's like choose a foreman, come out with a verdict. Those are the two pieces of guidance you basically get, except for how you have to judge each thing legally. So, but they don't tell you, they don't give you any instruction, any structure for the discussion itself. So In this case, it was like my first question was like, does anyone here feel like this guy would have died anyway at that moment?
No, that's what it's all about. Right?
And no one did. And I said, okay, so now our discussion is about what flavor of murder is this? Is this first, second, or manslaughter? And in fact, the sentiment in that room was actually more towards first-degree murder than it was towards manslaughter, which sort of surprised me because it was a fight, that just escalated.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
But very few people were arguing manslaughter, and everyone pretty much settled on second-degree murder based on the definitions. Mm-hmm. But there was some discussion because it was clear this guy had made a decision to kind of like, beat him in a fatally way.
Right. And second-degree murder is what, to remind us?
Second-degree murder is a deliberate decision to murder, but no premeditation.
I see. Okay.
But premeditation doesn't have a described length to it. So I could think I'm going to murder Mark Thompson now, and then a minute from now do it, and that would be enough premeditation.
Similarly, could you be in a fight with Mark Thompson and then walk away with Mark Thompson unconscious and come back and beat him in a murderous way and such that he loses his life, and now that's first-degree murder?
Yes.
That's kind of what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But we decided that there wasn't enough of a pause and it wasn't such a break in the action that it wasn't more of a crime of passion sort of a thing.
And you were unanimous in your decision?
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah. That's very exciting in its own weird, macabre way.
Yeah, the gig itself is interesting. Even a mundane case is sort of interesting if it doesn't go on too long, Yeah. But, the hassle is I have to go downtown on the subway every morning and blah, blah, blah. But, the actual thing is cool. And it's kind of like, it's, especially in the midst of this election and stuff, it was like to have this sort of reassuring piece of society where it's like, oh, the system is sort of functioning and people are at their best and people aren't bringing bias and prejudice to everything and they're really trying to be their best selves in this thing. It was actually kind of a refreshing thing. And it's sort of fucking sad when a murder trial is like reassuring and life affirming, but take it where I can get it at this point.
What you're saying is that the institutions of justice were working and people were bringing whatever biases they brought to those institutions of justice, they had left them aside and were just evaluating the facts, and that is encouraging, right?
It is, absolutely.
Josh, did you have another trial to attend to, or that's it? Once you're in, you're in?
Yeah, no, it's just one trial.
It's not like, hey, you did so well on that murder trial.
Well, that's kind of what it feels like with me, because I've been on 4, like no one I know has been on 4 trials.
When you are about to hand over the verdict, did you have an opportunity to mention our podcast, maybe in the edge-show.com?
This is the Edge-Show verdict, brought to you by edge-show.com.
I think we need to, in the new year, look for those opportunities to get the show out there.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay, so the next jury, I understand we didn't talk this conversation before this last jury duty, but the next jury duty, I think, might be an opportunity.
Yeah, promotion is retail, absolutely.
Yeah. So the guy was...
he was guilty.
The judge reads it, guilty.
The clerk reads it, yeah.
The clerk reads it, and then you look at the guy's face, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was actually sobbing at this point.
Was he really?
Yeah. Which is like satisfying in its way, it's much better than the murderous glare too,
Yeah, you don't want that.
The revenge-based, tirade. The sobbing is kind of like, okay, yeah, that's about how you should feel if you murdered someone, you son of a bitch.
Was he in an orange suit?
He was not. He was in the same civilian outfit every day. So he was clearly in holding during, when not in trial. But yeah, no, they don't make him do the jumpsuit.
Immediately after the trial, what happens? Is it like a hockey game where you all high five and go, okay, nice job?
Pretty much, yeah. Like a pickup game. Because there's no next practice. No one pretends like you're going to stay in touch, really.
Right.
It's not like when a show ends, where everyone's like, oh, we're family. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But everyone was, you've been through something together. There's a common experience. And people all were actually very, thankful to me about being a good foreman. And so it was, yeah.
Just with the holidays, nobody said, hey, if you're around for the holidays, we should...
Not to me. They might have said it to each other,
Don't tell Josh. Don't tell Josh.
Oh, hi, Josh. How are you?
Well, that's very exciting. What about the holidays? What are you doing? Are you putting the Christ back in Christmas this year, or that probably wouldn't be something you'd be involved in?
No, I've been steadily dechrusting Christmas
I see.
For the 22 years I've been with my Goyish wife.
Well, it's certainly been effective. I mean, based on the societal mean that we've but you're just working out under your own roof. You're saying,
yeah. I mean, yeah. Dechristing starts at home.
You don't care how much Christing is going on the outside.
No, I really don't. I say Christ away, but
yeah.
My wife is actually fairly Christian, but she's not. I've gotten her off having a tree and all that stuff.
Yeah,
because by showing no enthusiasm for it for enough years, eventually it just rips the fun out of it. I did that with fireworks too. By showing no enthusiasm, it's as good as being discouraging without actually being discouraging.
Yeah, because when you put that tree up and you do all the trimmings, you want somebody, presumably your husband, to go, wow, that looks great.
Oh, that's great. And it really just hurts my Jew bone. It really does. It's like I'm not very religious, but when there's a Christmas tree in my house, it's like I start feeling real Jewish.
Yeah, so you're not harsh about it, but you're just not going to celebrate it because it's not your
right. I was tolerant. I practiced tolerance, but that wasn't enough to make it fun, apparently.
Josh, I can't wait till your next jury trial.
Me either. Thankfully, it's a year statutorily.
Do you have it circled on the calendar because you look forward to it so much?
I just, every time I renew my driver's license or register my car or vote, I just know I'm back in the pool.
J. Elvis Weinstein. You can reach him on Twitter at J. Elvis Weinstein.
edge-show.com.
edge-show.com.
This is The Edge.
Well, welcome to the show, Tim Atkins.
Thank you for having me.
I want you to meet Heather Ankeny.
Hi there.
Hi.
And Josh.
Hi there.
J. Elvis Weinstein. Josh is a documentary filmmaker and a comic, so once in a while he says some inappropriate things. He's like our inappropriate relative. And then Heather is a producer and actress. And
I never say inappropriate things.
no, she's very appropriate. Tim Atkins, you were arrested and convicted for murder, weren't you?
Yes, for murder robbery.
What were the circumstances of that arrest? What happened? What went down? You went to prison for it, right? How long were you in prison?
23 years.
So what happened? How old were you when it happened?
17.
And was it in Los Angeles?
Yes, it was in Venice, California.
Oh, wow.
And did you murder anybody?
No, I didn't. What happened was I was, as a youngster, I ran the streets more than I should, and I was in places that I didn't have no business being in. And so on this particular night, somebody got killed and robbed. And so the police picked up a lot of different people, and a lady gave the police my name and said that I did it.
So, in other words, it was a little bit of round up the usual suspects type thing.
Sounds like it.
Right.
Had you been arrested before?
Yeah, I've been arrested before, but not for no violence, for receiving stolen goods, stuff like that.
Right.
So
right.
the woman who named you, did she have a beef with you?
No, she didn't have a beef with me. What I found out later on, she said because she had seen me prior that night, you know what I mean? And the police was intimidating her and threatening her and telling her she couldn't go home unless she gave them a name. She gave them my name.
Gotcha.
Jeez.
So you're arrested as a 17-year-old for murder robbery? What happens?
Well, I mean, to me, it was like a bad nightmare. When the police arrest me for this case, I'm like, they got the wrong guy. I haven't killed anybody, haven't robbed anybody. I don't do that.
Where did they arrest you?
They arrest me in Venice, California, like 6 days later.
Like off the street, or they go to your house? What happened?
No, they went to my house looking for me, which I didn't know nothing about. But they arrested me like 3 blocks away from my house.
So you are 17 years old. You obviously don't have an attorney, or you're not a person of means of any kind. What happens?
Well, I mean, they run you through the system. They sent me to juvenile hall. They gave me an attorney. And the first attorney that I had told me that if I plead guilty to the case, I go to YA until I was 25 years old. And I explained to him I wasn't pleading guilty to anything because I haven't done anything. And so because I didn't plead guilty in juvenile court, they bound me over to adult court and tried me as an adult.
And
Jeez.
What were the circumstances of the murder robbery that they accused you of, that you were ultimately, and by the way, just to tip the story, this is not the case of someone who says, hey, I didn't do it, and you just have to take their word for it. Later, it's found you didn't do it. Unfortunately, It wasn't found until you had served all that time. And ultimately, you prevailed, you were exonerated, and the state of California has to write you a big check for stealing that much of your life.
Right, they're supposed to, and it's like I've been going back and forth with the compensation board, and after 9 years, I've been out for 9 years. After 9 years, I finally won the case in court, but they can still appeal it or do whatever. So, I mean, it's really not over yet.
So let's go back, though. You were just saying, then they put you through the system. You said, I'm not pleading anything I didn't do.
Right.
And so they try you in adult court.
Yeah, they tried me in adult court. And you know, what I couldn't understand to this day, when I was in adult court, they asked the surviving victim, do you see the people in the court that robbed you and shot your husband? And I'm the only person in the court in the orange jumpsuit. She looked around the court and said, I know they have to be here. They bad people. So they automatically took a recess and took her in the hallway. Then when they brought her back in, she pointed me out. And I to this day, I don't understand how they was able to get away with that. Because if somebody murdered my loved one and I was there, and as soon as the question is asked to me, do you see the people? I would be able to say, yeah, they're sitting right there.
Sure.
You wouldn't have to take me out in the hallway and talk to me, then bring me back in.
And you're sitting in an orange jumpsuit. It's not hard to at least evaluate, is that the guy? And you're saying that when she looked at you in that orange jumpsuit, she clearly didn't identify you as the guy.
Right.
Wow.
Ugh.
So how long did the whole trial take?
Well, I fought the case for about 2.5 years. I stayed in the county jail for about 2.5 years fighting the case.
Geez, what is that, like 17 years old? That's a brutal place, isn't it, county jail?
Very brutal.
And you're 17? You were a big guy then?
I was like 6 feet tall, 187, something like that.
Were you having to defend yourself right away?
I mean, anytime you're in jail, you have to defend yourself because somebody's going to try you.
Especially in county.
Even the toughest people get took down in jail. Somebody is going to try you.
After 2.5 years, you're saying it just takes that long for the legal process to move along?
No, it took that long for the legal process to move along. And after I went to trial, the jury was out for 5 days.
So the jury, by virtue of being out for 5 days, they weren't sure.
Sure.
Exactly. And then not only that, after the jury came back with a guilty verdict, when the jury walked out into the hallway, 2 of the jury members started crying because they said they think they made the wrong decision. And so my lawyer tried to go back in and talk to the judge. He said he polled the jury and the case is over.
And then what does your lawyer say? That we'll appeal this, or don't worry, Tim, we'll try to somehow overturn this?
Yeah, he said we'll appeal it. I mean, but I lost the appeal. So, I mean, and then I didn't have any money to hire an attorney. I was indigent, so I was just sitting in jail.
How much were you sentenced to at the time?
I was sentenced to 32 years to life in prison.
Wow.
With parole?
Yeah, with parole.
So at that point, you're 19 or almost 20?
Yes.
And so you go where?
First, they sent me to the California Youth Authority until I was 25. On my 25th birthday, they sent me to prison.
What is the California Youth Authority like at that time?
At that time, it was like a gladiator school. It was crazy. I mean, to me, experiencing prison and experiencing the Youth Authority, I think the Youth Authority was way more brutal than prison.
Now, wait, let me just back up real quick. You said that had you pled guilty, you would have just done the Youth Authority until you were 25?
Yes.
And that's it?
Yes.
Wow.
So why was the Youth Authority? Is it just because it's all young idiots?
It's all a bunch of wild youngsters.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so they just do whatever they come to mind.
And there's no control of that? I mean, that is to say it's not supervised with armed...
It's supervised, but in the Youth Authority, they're not armed. They armed with pepper spray and beanbag rifles, stuff like that. You know, it's unlike prison. Prison have, mini 14s, and, you know, they have real firepower in prison.
So even for a guy who was a kid from the streets, that was a brutal few years for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's like basically being kidnapped and threw somewhere, and everybody is making decisions on your life. And I mean, to me, it was like I was just spinning in circles. You know, on one hand, it was disbelief because I couldn't believe this was happening to me. You know, and then at one point I started blaming myself. I'm like, well, if I wouldn't have been running the streets, if I wouldn't have been over here, this would have never happened to me. So I mean, it tears you apart.
Who comes and sees you when you're during that early part, the Youth Authority? Who comes and sees you at the Youth Authority?
Your family get to come see you, and if you have a girlfriend or whatever, you know, they allow them to come see you if they 18 years old. If they're not 18, then they have to come with an adult.
And was anybody coming to see you?
Yes, I mean my brother, my father, both of my grandparents, and my girlfriend that I had at the time.
And they all believed your innocence, I assume?
Yes.
There was no alibi? There wasn't anybody that said, no, he didn't do this. I was with him tonight. Even if you were running the streets, weren't you running the streets with other people?
Yeah, and people came to court, but
Jeez.
as far as the alibi, the person that I was with, he got arrested too and charged with the same crime. But unfortunately, he got killed in the county jail.
Wow. Well, that just tells you all you need to know about county jail, doesn't it?
Yikes.
He was killed in county jail, and what happened?
He was in a fight. He was beaten to death.
Jeez, man. All right, so you now are 25, and they transfer you out of this youth authority, and now you're going into the mainstream prison system.
Right. They sent me from the youth authority to Chino Prison, which then was a reception center, and I stayed there for about 9 months. And then they sent me to Tehachapi Max.
The name Tehachapi Max is scary. I know nothing good goes down at Tehachapi Max.
Yeah, it's a level 4 prison.
And what is life like in there? What happens? You go in, you have the other guys in the cell with you. What is that?
They have 2-man cells. What it is, it's in the city of Tehachapi. It's in the mountains. It's all the way at the top of the mountains. And it's really basically a whole nother world.
In what sense?
It's like a human zoo. You know, let me see, I can explain prison like this. I mean, out here in society, you know, you have different rules and regulations, but in prison, you know, they have their own set of rules. The staff have a set of rules, and the inmates or the convicts have a set of rules. You know, and even like I was saying, even the toughest dudes can lose their life in there. You know, you really have to watch yourself.
Here's what I get. You never know what the flashpoint's going to be. You never know what the conflict's going to be over. It keeps you, like, I would think, in a constant state of sort of anxiety about that. Is that right, or are you able to anticipate the conflicts?
I mean, you just have to watch your surroundings. See, me, every time I came out the cell, I watched everything around me because a lot of stuff can go on that you don't know nothing about, and at any time, you know, the whole prison could just go in an uproar.
Did that happen when you were there?
A few times.
What happened to produce the uproar?
It's a number of things. You know, people don't pay drug debts or whatever. It's all kind of stuff. People gamble. A person to kill you over a top ramen soup.
And how can they kill you? Explain to me. I understand how somebody gets killed, but I'm saying when you say it's a Tehachapi Max, I think, wow, that's ultra supervised, correctional officers everywhere, they're armed. That's not the case?
Yeah, I mean, there's correctional officers everywhere, and they armed and all that. But I mean, you in prison, so they're not going to be able to watch everything. A person can make a shank, a knife, or whatever, and go after whoever you're going after.
Can you get away with killing somebody in prison without there being any repercussions, or do you absolutely know, hey, I'm now going to go to solitary because I killed this guy?
No, it's a lot of people that got away with that.
Wow.
Because nobody snitches, right?
Right. Because if you do, then you next.
Yeah.
What type of person is safest in prison? Is the person who just keeps completely to themselves?
You can't keep completely to yourself.
No.
If you try to keep completely to yourself, that's when the vultures come after you.
Okay. Then you have no one to have your back.
Exactly.
So if you were giving advice to me, you know, I mean, you've met me. I'm not exactly, I don't scare people when I walk in. What advice could you give somebody who's like, you know, hey, I was wrongly accused and convicted, and now I'm having to go do this? You're probably thinking, hey, Mark Thompson, you ain't going to survive a year.
I mean, that's not true. The thing of it is, I was in there for a long time, and a bunch of youngsters was coming through while I was there. And for me, you know, I used to sit back and watch youngsters come in there, and some of them do end up doing the wrong thing, and they end up in situations that they had no knowledge of. So what I used to do when a youngster come talk to me, I just tell them, look, find you a program, do your program, and mind your business. Now, whoever you hanging out with, just make sure you're hanging out with the right group of dudes. Mm-hmm. Because if you hanging out with dudes that's involved in all kind of stuff, and people see you hanging out with them, whatever they involved with and somebody coming from them, they going to come for you too.
Am I going to have sex with somebody, Tim, when I go in?
No.
Is that a deal breaker for you, Mark?
Wait.
I thought that was the one upside.
See, a lot of people that's in there like that, they was like that before they even got there.
So you're saying that's overplayed?
Yeah, that's overplayed.
And I feel like my understanding is that the child molesters, or chomos as they call them, are the least liked people there.
Well, I mean, as far as the child molesters and stuff like that, they put them in protective custody.
Yeah, because they don't fare well in the general public.
If they put them on general general population, they wouldn't last long at all.
Yeah.
Is there a hierarchy there, Tim, when you were in there? I want to get to what happened to your case and how it was overturned in a second, but right now I just want to talk about, because you spent so much of your life, 23 years in this place. By the way, was it one place or did they move you around?
No, I was in 6 different prisons.
Mm-hmm.
They try to move you around like every 3-4 years.
So where else did you go?
I was in, Lancaster, Corcoran, Tehachapi, Chino, Soledad, and I went to CMC for about a couple of weeks.
What is CMC?
It's a medical facility. I went there to have surgery.
I see. When you go from one place to the next, is because some of these facilities are older than others, some of these facilities are more modern than others. Is there really a sense like, oh, wow, this is, or is it all just a version of hell?
No, all of it is, I can't sit here and say that all of it was a version of hell. The CDC works on a point system. The higher your points, the higher custody level that you are. So when your points start to drop, your custody level starts to drop. So like me, I went from level 4 to level 2. When they sent me to Soledad, which was a level 2, that's when your security level for me, that was the lowest I was going to be able to go. But the supervision was kind of cut down to where you wasn't watched as much and you had a little bit more room to move around.
When you were first in there, and for how long after, were you just saying to whoever would listen, I didn't do this, I didn't murder anybody, I didn't rob anybody? Or does nobody care?
The attitude with most people that work for CDC and everybody say that they're innocent, but that's not true. When I was in there, people would tell you what they did. Yeah, I did this, did that. And, my personal opinion, I ran into very little people that were saying that they was innocent.
Oh, wow.
We get a lot of our information from watching Shawshank Redemption over and over, so you have to excuse us.
Yeah. You don't have to pick an alliance when you get in or all of that stuff, do you? Or,
most of the people that end up in prison, like me, I grew up in Venice. And where I grew up, it was Latinos and blacks. The blacks was Crips, and the Latinos are Serenos. So me going to prison, I ran into a lot of people that was from Venice. So I was already hooked up with them. But the people that I ran into, they was much older than me, and they couldn't believe that I was in jail for murder. So when I ran my story down to a couple of them, one of them, Sherwood Fleming, he told me, he said, look, you need to start writing letters to different organizations to try to get you some help. And he helped me write these letters, and I finally received some help from the California Innocence Project.
Oh, that's great.
And what do you say in that initial letter to the California Innocence Project?
I just explained the case as much as I knew about it, and my whole situation of just being in prison for something that I didn't do, and told them that I was innocent, and no matter what, nobody is gonna never be able to make me say that I did something that I know I didn't do.
Did when you write that letter, is it typewritten there, or you write it in longhand?
No, I typed it. I had an electric typewriter.
And how long after you sent that letter out and you just are kind of hoping, did it take for them to go, hey, wait a minute, we're interested in your case?
Well, Mark, I sent out about 16 letters to different organizations, and some of the responses that I received was nasty.
Really?
For example?
This preacher sent me a letter. He used to help people that he felt was innocent. But because in the letter I explained to him that I was a gang member, he told me that I probably did it and this, that, and the other. And, he wrote some foul stuff when he got back. But I didn't let that deter me, though, because at that time, everybody believed that everybody in the gang is a killer and a murderer and all this, is a drug dealer and all this other stuff. And that's not true. People didn't understand that sometimes you grow up in a community where there's certain gangs live in the community, and you wasn't going to be able to walk through that community unless you was a part of that gang. That didn't necessarily mean that you was a killer.
No, it means you're a survivor.
When the California Innocence Project did contact you, you get a letter in prison saying, we're interested in your case?
Yes. The California Innocence Project contacted me, and also Barry Scheck contacted me, too.
Wow.
He said that he wanted my case, but I wrote him back and told him that the California Innocent Project had already taken my case, and he said that they was sister companies or whatever, and my case was in good hands.
You went from no one being interested in your case to then they were competing for your case. Barry Scheck, you'll remember, was in the O.J. Simpson trial, right?
He's also got a whole lot of people out of jail on DNA.
Yeah, he's a distinguished attorney, and he does a lot of that forensic DNA, or is that the... Anyway.
I think so.
So the California Innocence Project then writes back to you. What a day that had to be, huh?
Right. I was ecstatic.
And
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And, I was like, finally, there's some hope.
And then, do you have to keep that to yourself in prison, or are there people who are actually going to feel good for you when something like that happens?
Good question.
Well, I wasn't really a bad guy in prison, so a lot of people knew my situation, and they was like, it's messed up, and they wanted me out because while I was in there, I ended up in different situations where I could have gotten a lot of trouble, but people stopped me from doing it, and they took it upon themselves.
Sounds like you have good karma. It sounds like you at least got some good advice once you got there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the good karma part. Anybody does 23 years. Pardon me, but I'm saying that's a bad break.
That's true.
So now the process of your ultimate exoneration. They become involved. You get that letter that first day. When is that happening in your term of 23 years?
I received a letter in 2003. Been in, 2003, 18 and a half or 19 years.
So you, after 18 and a half or 19 years, finally, the California Innocence Project steps up. And then what's the process?
And the process was they had to find witnesses, and after they found the witness, they did a writ of habeas corpus. And the thing was getting the judge to grant the writ of habeas corpus. So what happened was my writ went in front of the same judge that sentenced me to prison.
Jeez, man, this is like a movie. Are
It
you
is.
kidding?
Are they going to make one? They might. This is L.A.
And so he granted the writ. They called me down to court, and we had a hearing. And after it was all said and done, he said that if he would have had the information that he have now, if he would have had it back then, I would have never went to prison.
Wow.
Then he apologized to me. And then he said the DA and the detectives owed me an apology, but I don't know if you ever received it. So never received it, but I eventually got out. And the day that I was supposed to get out, the day that he released me, I didn't get out because CDC didn't want to release their hold, so I got out the following day.
The judge said, if I'd had this information then, I never would have allowed your conviction. What was that information?
Well, they had witnesses where the police basically the police threatened this witness and forced her into giving them a name. That's the one that gave her my name.
And that was that was demonstrated by the lawyers associated with your case at that point after 19 years.
They also found audio of her interrogation.
Oh, okay.
I see. So that was suppressed, that audio originally?
I never knew nothing about it until 9 years ago when I got out.
So after all that time, 23 years, you are let out with an apology from the judge. How old are you then?
When I got out, I was, 39?
And now you got to try to put a life together.
Right.
What kind of stuff was there? Like what were the things that were most striking? A technology had changed, but you're actually a very technologically savvy guy. It's pretty amazing. It's one of the weird things about you. You were gone for so long, and yet you're kind of on the cutting edge of all technology. Where does that come from?
Well, I'm intrigued by that, so I read a lot, and I try to find out as much as I can about technology. Because the first day I was released, my little brother handed me a cell phone, talking about somebody finna call me, they want to talk to me. And music started playing out the phone, and I didn't even know how to answer the phone. And I was kind of embarrassed because everybody was laughing at me. So, so I said, I'm going to have to find out all about your stuff. So that's what I do.
Your brother played for the Oakland Raiders, didn't he?
Yeah, and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. I mean, he's a really good player, Larry Atkins.
Yeah.
Was he helpful in getting you back into the mainstream? Or how do you go about plotting a strategy to get back in the mainstream?
I mean, he was helpful even while I was in prison. We was writing each other back and forth, and every time he got a break from the NFL, he'd come see me. And we stayed in constant contact. And even when I got out, we sat down and talked. And, he did a little bit for me. He gave me a little bit of money or whatever, and we talked. But me and him always been close, but it was hard for me to try to reintegrate back into society because I had been away from my family for so long. And so a lot of people in my family thought I was still the same person I was when I left.
In what way? What does that mean?
They thought I was still a child. They tried to treat me like I was still a child. I'm a 39-year-old grown man.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not the same. So for me, it was like I'm an adult, and that's how I want to be treated. You know, and anything other than that, in my eyes, was disrespectful. So I had to get away from them. And what I did, I found there's an organization called Life After Exoneration. A lady by the name of Heather, she got me a therapist, so I started going to therapy for about 8 months. You know, I needed somebody to talk to other than my family.
Right.
And so that kind of helped me a lot.
I would be in therapy every day. I couldn't imagine it. I mean,
You are anyway, aren't you? That's without prison.
That's right. So you, in these different ways, you began to reintegrate. And at the same time, you're beginning the process of trying to bring a case against the state of California because they wrongly accused you of murder and they wrongly convicted you of murder.
And when we first filed for compensation, I was denied. And the rules of the compensation board at that time was if at any time during this hearing they find me to be credible, then the case is supposed to be over and I win. So we had the hearing, and after we got the response, they said, the hearing officer wrote that he felt I was credible, but I didn't prove my case. And so we appealed it, and the appellate court overturned it, and they sent the case to Orange County, and finally the judge in Orange County finally granted my writ of mandate.
Jeez, it's unbelievable.
It really is. It's frustrating.
It took 9 years.
I mean, it's just extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, that you find out that there was a coerced identification. You find out that your lawyers at the time weren't told of this interrogation tape. It's extraordinary to me.
And that other guy passed away in county who also was not guilty?
Right. Tell me about that day where you're ultimately awarded money. I mean, that is to say, a judgment comes, and what happens?
Well, I haven't been awarded anything yet. I just won the writ of mandate. So, I mean, the state of California can still appeal it.
Now, why does the state of California appeal that when it's so clearly a man has been wrongly convicted?
Well, I'm going to tell you my personal opinion from dealing with district attorneys and stuff like that. They're very arrogant, and so they believe that when they set their mind to something, they say somebody is guilty, in their eyes, they're guilty. They just don't give a damn. You know, I've seen a DA, even a person that was found innocent from DNA, a DA still said that, I still feel that we got the right person. That's stupid.
That's insane.
We have our president-elect saying that shit about the Central Park Five.
I was thinking the same thing, actually. So, assuming there's no appeal, they owe you money, right?
Right.
How much money do they owe you?
Well, at one point, it was $100 a day. Then they changed the law. It's $140 a day. So I haven't really added it up. I wanted to, but I said I'm not going to do that because it's not over.
Right.
Right.
But I'm going to say this, though, Mark. For 23 years, you know, to me, really, it's not enough money that they can ever give me to pay me for what they did to me.
I'll second that. I think it's ridiculous to put a dollar amount on it. I mean, I know we have to put dollar amounts on mistakes that are made. We have to put dollar amounts on mistakes that are made in surgery, mistakes that are made in all elements of our lives. But the idea that you can take the best 23 years, the prime 23 years, and then assign some number to it, and it's going to be incredibly low no matter what it is.
Right.
Your mind is so great. You're so good with so much. I mean, who knows what you could have done during that time? You could have probably run some startup and be a jillionaire on your own. Help me, though, as I root from the sidelines, how long before they ultimately will say, hey, here's the check, it's over? Even though the check is insufficient, it's our insufficient way of saying it's done.
I have no idea because, like I said, they can still appeal it and they can drag on for 6 more years.
Oh my God! You have a child now?
Yes, I have a 9-year-old son, and I also have another baby on the way, which will be my last one. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that he got out. He got out 9 years ago. Is that? Yeah.
2007.
Yeah.
February 2007.
And so you got the child is 9 years old. You know, he'll always have those bragging rights. Yeah, my dad made me on an hour one.
And not only that, you know, Mark, you remember the school I worked at? When I got out of prison, I went to Cal State and took a counseling course and got the certificate. And I got hired at a school for at-risk youth. And I was a gang intervention specialist. So, I mean, I got out helping people. I got out helping people in the community. I wasn't really bitter. I just wanted to give back. Because while I was a youngster out there running the streets, I mean, I did some things that I didn't have no business doing, but I never hurt anybody.
Yeah.
So, it was just important to me to give back. And so that's what I tried.
The fact that you even felt that you owed anyone anything is pretty remarkable about you.
For me, it's like I just didn't want, if I could prevent youngsters from experiencing what I had to go through, that's what I was trying to do.
And witness the fact that here's a guy who didn't do anything. And by virtue of his presence on the streets, he got scooped up.
Right.
So in a sense, he wants to keep those kids from that. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for joining us. What a harrowing story. I mean, it really is the kind of thing that you read about in books or that you see in a movie. It's awful what happened to you. And again, I marvel at your attitude, though. You're not a bitter guy. You're a happy guy. You're on top of all this technology, and you just seem to be really living life in such a full way. I congratulate you on that attitude.
Thank you, man. I'm just, to be bitter, it'll stop my forward progress. I'm not that old. I still got a lot more living to do. So I just want to, live the rest of this out peaceful.
Well, I hope 2017 brings you a big check to help with all that.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No
Thanks,
problem.
Tim.
And thanks for having me.
It was nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love you, Tim.
Love you too, Mark.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them, you idiot. Subscribe to The Edge on iTunes, the Stitcher, and you can totally listen to it on iHeartRadio.
edge-show.com.
If you like The Edge, help us out by liking us on Facebook. Subscribe to The Edge with Mark Thompson on iTunes or on Stitcher.